Showing visuals is essential when it comes to sharing or evaluating your findings. Have you ever been in a presentation or read an article about a complicated topic and did not see a single image or plot? I have. You feel overwhelmed and it is way harder to understand the context. Visualization is crucial, especially in the financial world, where people are used to seeing charts all the time. We will explore the most common chart types for trading: simple line charts, area charts, and candlestick charts, and dive into advanced options so you can impress your boss. We will make use of the Plotly library, which is one of the most popular packages for interactive visualizations. With a couple of lines of code, Plotly allows to create great looking plots in Python and R. Plotly includes a wide range of different plots, which can be produced in no time. So let's jump into coding our graphs. The first thing we obviously have to do is to get our data. We covered that in the last video. If you missed that, just jump back. I will just copy and paste that code in here. So importing the data. Like I said, it's in the last video. If you want to more details about that, just go and check that one out. So we get our NumPy, we get the library we discussed in the last video, and these three are new. That's our actual plotting libraries. We use Plotly as we discussed, and there are two different ones. We have the graph objects and the express. They just offer kind of different chart types. We also will use the subplots later on, and we download the Bitcoin data, Amazon, and metadata. If I run that, we see we created our data frames. The first chart type we want to look into are area charts. So let's create our markdown and create our first chart. Like I said in the introduction, it's pretty easy to actually create charts. It's basically one line of code. So let's just create our area chart variable and call that. We use the Plotly Express library in that case. And all we have to call is area. We want to put the Amazon chart in there. So let's do Amazon close. And that's basically all to create the chart. We will add a title here and say Amazon close data. And yeah, that's all to create the chart. And to show the chart, you always have to call the chart with a .show. And that's all to create our first chart with Plotly. You see, it's pretty easy to create that one. We will customize that a little bit now. The first thing we have to do, or the first thing we want to do to create or to change the x-axis a little bit. So we do area chart dot update x-axis, and now we do a couple of different types we want here to change here. So we want title text equals date. We want a range slider, and I will show you in a second what that is. It's a pretty cool feature that Plotly offers. If I run that, now you will see we have that cool slider on the bottom here. So now if I use my mouse and run that slider, you can see how the chart changes. So you can zoom in and out with that slider on the bottom. So it's a pretty cool feature to let the user filter the data. Another thing we have to do, or we want to do, is maybe on trading sites, you always see these buttons showing year to date, last year, last 5 years. We want to create, or we want to give the user the option to press these buttons too. These buttons are called the range selectors. Range selector equals. We need a dictionary for that one. And in the dictionaries, we want to put buttons. And the buttons we have to put in a list. And here we put our buttons in. That one is a little bit more complicated to code. but you will see if you did it once, we can always reuse that code. So the first one we want to do is the year-to-date button. So we go in and say we need another dictionary. The count is the period we want to go back. It's like 1 year now. We want to label it year-to-date. We want the step to be year. And we want step mode to be to date. The next one we want to create is, let's say we want to check the last 6 months. So we just need another div. We want the last 6 months. So we want 6, label equals 6 month. Step in that case now is months instead of year. And step mode in that case is backward. If I run that, now we can see we created 2 buttons here showing year to date and 6 months. So if I press the year to date button, you see that we get January to January. If I see the last 6 months, you can see we're starting in September, seeing the last 6 months, also shown you on the range slider. So that's a pretty cool feature you can add to a chart to make it more interactional. You can also add like whatever kind of labels you want here. If I want the last year to be shown, let me just copy that one here. We have 1 year. We call that 1 year again. Take the year. And we forgot the comma. So now we see we have another label with 1 year. If I press that, we see the whole last year. The last thing, or the next thing we want to add to our chart is a little update on the y-axis. So now it's showing area and the format here is not looking very good. So if I put area chart dot same format, update y-axis, we want the title in that case to be, let's say, value. No, let's just call it Amazon price. And we want to change the format of that tick here a little bit. So we add another one and say tick prefix equals $. So if we want that, now we see we have Amazon price and we see we added our $sign at that point. We can also customize it a little more. We could put the header more in the middle and all, but we will just jump over that for now. The last thing we want to do, we don't want to show the legend here at the right side. So we do area chart dot update layout. And if we run that, we want to don't show the legend anymore. So pretty self-explaining, we just do show legend equals false. And now we got rid of that legend here on the right side. You can do whatever you want with that chart. You could change the color, like I said, you can change the title a little bit, and so on. So there's a lot of options for that kind of chart, and in general with all charts in Plotly. The second chart we want to cover are line charts. Line charts are basically the one you know out of the math classes or whatever. So a pretty well-known type of graph. And again, it's pretty easy to create these kind of charts in your Python code. So now we want to use, instead of the PX library we used before, the Plotly Express one, we now use the Go library, the Plotly graph objects. So the first thing here, you have to create an actual figure. So we do fig equals go.figure. And now we can add whatever we want to our figure. We want to do a line chart. So we do add a trace. So for every kind of chart you want to put in there, or for every kind of measure you want to show, you need a new trace. We want to start with a scatter plot. That's basically our line chart. And let's start with showing the Facebook data. So we do fig x equals meta.index, so our time frame, and epsilon equals meta. Let's do it like that at close. And let's change the color a little bit to make it more Facebook-like. And we want that color to be blue. And we want a width of 2. And let's name it meta. That's all again to create the chart. So you see, again, it's not that hard. And we just do fig.show. And we see now we have our line chart created for Facebook. That's all. And here we see the drop down in the end of February. The next step we want to do, maybe we want to add a title like we did before. We update our layout. And let's call it stock price meta. If I run that, we see we have a nice header in here. Again, we could customize it more to put it in the middle and all. We will skip that for now. But now we want to compare the meta price to the Amazon price we saw before. So let's just add another trace, like we said before. Whenever you want to put another line, just add a new trace. Pretty easy. So let's do a little space here. It's the same again. We do a scatter plot. Instead of taking the metadata frame, we take the Amazon data frame. So y equals Amazon at close. The line this time should be yellow, but just to show you, you can also add these HTML color codes. So let's call it AA, CA, 3B. It's giving us a nice yellow. And again, we want the width to be 2. And let's call it Amazon. And if we run that, now you can see the two charts or the two stocks next to each other in one chart. We can see that the Amazon price is pretty high compared to the Facebook price. Now you know why we named them. We see the Meta and Amazon on the right side in our legend again. If you don't want to show the legend, you can go back what we did here and just show legend equals false. But the nice other feature is if you hand over here, you can see the tooltip. That tooltip is also customizable if you want to change it later on, but we will not dive into that deeper for now. But you see, it's pretty easy to compare two stock prices in one chart with a couple of lines of code. Last but not least, we look into candle charts. I think that the most famous one for stock trading. Let's get it down and let's do candlestick charts. Okay, so let's jump right into it. It's the same structure as we just did before. So basically we can just copy paste what we did before. As I said, all the figures in Plotly are pretty much the same. We get rid of the second one for now. And we want to look into the Bitcoin data now. So if we do not there, instead of Meta, we take BTC. We take BTC. We name it BTC, obviously. And yeah, that's what we would have to do the scatter plot. But we wanted to create the candlestick chart. So we just call it candlestick. For candlestick, we need the high, low, open, and close. That's the components we show in a candlestick. So we have to give all of that to our chart. So instead of the Y, we say that's a close. Then we need to add the open. That is BTC open. Next step, high, BTC high. And the last one is low equals BTC low. So now we don't need a line anymore. The name can stay. And that's basically it to show the Bitcoin data. So let's just call it Bitcoin for now. We forgot a comma here. And if we run that, then we see we created our candle chart. Now we can already see that with the candlestick chart, the slider on the bottom comes automatically. So if you don't want it, you can just get rid of it by setting that slider, range slider visible to false in that case. We can leave it for now. We can see here we see our candle and it open, high, low, and close for that time. Next step, we want to customize it a little bit again. So what we want to show is we want to advance our charting a little bit. Now it's the time to impress our boss or whoever you want to impress, or just for your trading purposes. We want to add a second chart where we show the volume at that time. So if we do, let's go in, and instead of calling go.figure, we now call make the subplot we just created or we just loaded before. And we want two charts, so that's why we put row to 2. We want one column, that's the rows. We want one column. We want them to share the x-axis, so they take the same time. That's true. We want a little space in between these two. And yeah, let's leave it for like that for now. So like we did before, to add a second chart, we just need to add a second trace. So nothing complicated, we already know that. So we add a trace. And we want, like I said, we want to add a bar chart. So we take go.bar. And the same procedure again, like we always do. You see it's not complicated. BT index, comma here, y equals, we wanted to put the volume, so let's call BTC volume. And that's it in here for now. And we want to put row to 2 and call to 1, because that's telling the subplot now that that chart should go below the other one. So if we run that, now we see we have our plot down here. That's not looking so good anymore with that slider in here and with our legend and all. So we want to optimize that a little bit. First step, we get rid of that slider. So we update our layout. Oh, we already did an update layout here. So we can just go in here, show legend equals 2. So we get rid of the legend here on the side. Then we want the x-axis range slider visible set to false, and run that. And now we see we got rid of the range slider. Now it's that one is maybe a little bit too high. We don't want it so big compared to our chart. The chart should be a little bigger. So we can go back here and set row height. And let's say the first one, our candle chart should take 70% and the volume should take 30%. And now we see that candle chart stick is a little higher now. Oh, we wanted to set, sorry, of course, we wanted to set that to false instead of true to get rid of the legend. So another way to zoom in is just take your mouse and go in here. And now you can see that's the volume of Bitcoin over the last day. So let's customize this a little more. The last thing we want to look into is to customize these bars here a little bit. We want, when the price gone up, we want it to be green. And when the price went down, we want it to be red, like it is now. So let's rescale that again. So obviously here, that bar corresponding to that line or to that candle should be green too. So it's not that hard. We just create a new column in our data frame, call it BTC color. And that's a statement MP where. And we want when the close is actually bigger than the open, then we want our candle to be green, and else we want it to be red. That's all we have to do here. And now we put a color in here. That's the wrong place. We want to edit over the bar. So let's put it there. Now we just have to edit in here. So we go back into our bar chart and call marker color. And we call the BTC column we just created the BTC color. If I run that, now we can see that we added color to our Bitcoin data. So let's make it a little more visible, and let's take the 1 day color for the last 10 days. And if we rerun that, now we can see the volume we had over that day, and we can see the actual candle charts. And the last thing we now want to do, we want to update our axis a little bit. And let's call that fig.update y-axis. We just want to give a title so we know which chart shows what. So fig.update y-axis, and we call title text. And we want to call that price. And that's row 1 and call 1. And now we just copy paste that piece and call it volume and call that in row 2. So if I enter that, now we have a little label in here, and we see a nice looking chart with the volume on the bottom and the price as a candle chart on the top. And you can see it's pretty easy to create all of these charts.